Hi, it's Kyle here with Cisco with Kyle. Today we're going to be discussing VTP, a VTP domain. Essentially, a VTP domain is essentially a way in how you can control a family of switches in one domain in one area, so that you just have to make one change and the rest will follow. You don't have to go into each switch. So configuring a VTP server and a client switch. So if we have a topology like this is coming from computer networking notes. Essentially, these switches here, if I bring out my pen here, there is three different modes. There is server for S. There is transparent, and then there's client for C. So for these three switches, you would have one acting as the server and mostly these other two as a client. What the server allows for you to edit and modify VLANs. And if these other ones are clients, what they would do is they would then update they would receive messages from the server to then change and modify their VLANs. This means is that if an administrator goes into the switch in the one in the middle and tries to change the VLAN or tries to create a new VLAN, they'll be denied. It can only happen at the server switch. That makes any sense? Let's erase this. So here's some of the details here on the different modes here. VTP mode of server, transparent, and client. So setting this up, what you need to do is go to your first switch, enable config terminal here, and as you can see here, what they did here is host name. They just changed it to S1. They made this as the VTP server. VT mode a server. Let's see here. VTP domain. So they created this as the domain here. And then they came over to the client. They made the host name S2 for switch 2. They made this the client. And then they put in the domain example. So you can see here in this, what you need to have for these switches to kind of synchronize, I should say. Is you need to have, if we're looking at switch 1, see how it has STP domain example, VTP domain example. So you need to have these two so that the VTP domain, they're in the same domain, and then the name you put in. So they're both named as example. And then what you can see here is that what they're trying to do here for this tutorial here is they're trying to say to you, hey, we're going to put this switch 2 into a client mode, and in S1 we're going to make this one as the server. Okay. So whatever happens, the configurations change on S1 will then be learned and listened by S2, and it will change its VLAN table based on the V1. I kind of did the same example in the Boson Net simulator. The only really thing that this VTP client mode on switches did this exact same thing. The only thing that was different was we were using switches. And so with these switches that were back to back, I used a trunk link. And one thing I forgot that you need to always have is not just put switchboard mode trunk, but also add this key thing here after you get into the interface is switchboard trunk encapsulate .1Q. And essentially what that is you have to do that for each trunk that you set up. What that means is it encapsulates the packets that are VLANs each. So you can essentially you're telling the trunk to encapsulate all the packets that have packets that have been tagged with a VLAN can go through it. If you don't add this one line, you'll be getting issues of sending packets through it. You'll be trying to ping maybe from a device up to the router using a trunk from the device to the switch and then the switch to the router. You'll find that the ping will be not reachable, and that's because you haven't added the switch port trunk encapsulation on the trunk interface. So that's super important. Other than that, that's what VTP is. You have to set up a domain. Let's go up here. So once you have set up your trunks and those are all set up, what you need to do is do a VTP domain. And you can call that whatever you want, but it has to be the same for the different switches that you have connected. And then once you have typed into the domain name with the VT domain command, is then say what you've planned to use. So most of the time it's a VTP mode server for the master, and then for all those, and then for the rest of the switches, you would have them designed for client. So the clients listen to the server. And that is how to set up VTPs in your topology.